Jesus called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out evil spirits and to heal every disease and sickness.
The Bible contains remarkable stories of miracles and divine interventions. Moses parted the sea. Peter healed a man lame from his mother's womb. Jesus drove demons out of people and raised others from the dead. But are these types of events still happening today?
We too have a beam of divine light and guidance that God has put within the heart of every man. And it's one of the greatest proofs that there is a God.
More amazing supernatural things are happening than we realize.
This is Divine Intervention, the interview show that features intriguing people who've experienced the hand of God in amazing ways. Divine Intervention was created and produced with the purpose of encouraging believers, spiritual seekers, and skeptics alike that Jesus is alive and is still performing miracles and working in the world today.
I believe in miracles.
Here's your host, Daniel Fazina.
Hello, friend, and welcome to another exciting episode of Divine Intervention Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to spend some time with me. My name is Daniel Fazina, and I'll be your host. And I hope and pray that this episode will encourage you. I think it will, because our guest today is pretty dynamic, and he's got an amazing testimony of how not only how the Lord got a hold of him, but also how the Lord has sustained him and led him into a ministry that's really helping handicapped people and also people who are struggling with addiction. And he's helping ministries as well raise money to do their ministry work. So we'll get to him in a minute, but before we do, I would like to invite you to go to divineinterventionradio.com. That's our website. If you miss any of the shows, you can check out the archives there. They're all there, and they're also on YouTube, youtube.com/Divine Intervention Radio. Please go and like the episodes and comment, and please subscribe to the channel. That will really help us to grow the show as we're trying to get the word out to as many people as we can about the good news of Jesus Christ and the miracles that God is still doing today. You can also follow me on Twitter at DanielFazina1 on Twitter.com. That's at DanielFazina, the numeral 1, on Twitter.com. All right, without further ado, let me get to today's guest. His name is Michael Benson, and he's got a pretty powerful testimony. He is the youngest person in the world to ever have had glaucoma surgery, and they operated on his eyes when he was only a few days old. He was born with glaucoma, and he is almost 58 years old today, and miraculously, he still has vision, and God has done some amazing work in his life. And he's going to be sharing his testimony of how he was born and grew up with this disease, and how God got a hold of him and then led him into ministry. His websites are b-causes.com, that's b-causes.com, and lovevision.org. And again, his name is Michael Benson, and I'd like to welcome him to Divine Intervention right now. Michael, you are on Divine Intervention Radio. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and share. I really appreciate it.
It's really my pleasure, Daniel, to be on your show.
Awesome. Well, we want to get to the amazing work you're doing with bcauses.com and Love Vision and all the good stuff. But before we do, can you take us to the beginning? Tell us about your background growing up and, what it was like for you and maybe how you came to know Jesus in the first place.
Well, I have a very interesting background. Growing up, my mom is Jewish and my dad was Irish. So at my house growing up, it was Shalom, have a beer growing up.
I love it.
Yeah, pretty confusing. 1 year a tree, 1 year a bush. I would go to one grandparent and they would be like, don't eat from that dish, Michael. It's a dairy dish. And I'd go to the other grandparent and they'd be like, have some more bacon. So, it was confusing. I was really brought up with no church. My brother quit Hebrew school at 12, so I really didn't have much training at all. And there was a big, something that's very big in my life today, which really defines the ministry work that I do, was that I was the youngest baby in the world to have glaucoma surgery.
Wow.
So I was just a few days old. there was an experimental surgery, and but for the grace of God, my entire life would have been spent blind. And so growing up, it really hit me at 16 years old. Again, I really don't have any type of God in my life. I was a wrestler, and I'd pray before the match, help me win.
Right.
But at 16 years old, I needed both my eyes operated on. I had been taking, pills and drops, since birth, and I needed both my eyes operated on, and I'm going to call this a point of crisis. My parents went through divorce. I couldn't wrestle that year, which was my whole identity. So,
wow.
And I was told that I should take Braille based on the current technology. And I began to drink alcohol. What do you do when someone says at 16 you have a eye disease that there is no cure for and you should take Braille, and your parents are getting divorced? And I decided to drink alcohol and other substances, and that led me down a very dark path. And I was this is really the story of the entire change, and before I tell you what happened, I'm going to first let whoever's listening to tell you that some will say that my eyes today are a miracle. I'm 57 years old. Currently, I'm still driving, and it's absolutely amazing that I have the vision that I have.
And so you were born with glaucoma, and you've had it for 57 years.
That's correct.
Wow.
I'll be 58 in December.
And for anyone who's not familiar with glaucoma, can you describe a little bit of what it is and how long it usually progresses? Because I know it can lead to blindness, right?
Well, there is no cure. I couldn't give you the exact figure today, but there's millions of people in America that have it. There's currently no cure for glaucoma. It's controlled with, eye drops, and if you have advanced glaucoma, pills to help relieve the pressure. And what happens without giving a college course, the pressure builds up, almost like blood pressure. You don't really know what's going on, and once you lose the vision, there's no way of getting it back.
Okay.
Typically, you find people that are elderly start getting glaucoma, and it is one of the top causes of blindness, in the world. So being born with glaucoma back in 1961, no one had ever done this surgery on a baby this young, and two, the technology at that particular point, that surgery was experimental. There wasn't hope that at that point that I'd be on your show today at almost 58 years old with vision.
Amazing.
So it is amazing. And so the miracle of it is today we have a foundation that we share what we went through, and we take those losing vision on visual experiences, and we share our experience, strength, and hope with it, which includes what happened to us and how we found Christ in our life to be an overcomer in our life, and to live in the power, not in the fear. Imagine being 16 and told that you're going blind, and that manifested to 21 years old, late 21, hitchhiking, thinking about ending my life, or making it, I had my plans were, I'll join the service, but they wouldn't take you back then with glaucoma. Or I'll move to Colorado, because I had a friend that moved to Colorado, because, I'll just make a geographical cure and maybe it'll get better. Or maybe I'll just end my life, and very depressed, hitchhiking, drinking every day. I was out in Jackson, New Jersey, hitchhiking to Beechwood, New Jersey, where I grew up, to visit a friend, to hang out in the park, as crazy as that sounds, in Beechwood, New Jersey, to just get high and drink for the day. And 3 days in a row, not 3 rides, because it was about 30-mile hitchhike. And I'll tell you, Daniel, if some of the older listeners on your line here, if they remember, like, Welcome Back, Kotter, I had hair like Juan Epstein.
Right,
and,
yeah.
I would not pick me up. I mean, there must have been an evangelistic movement back in the early 80s. This was 1983. Let's go find the most, poor, suffering soul and pick him up and talk about Jesus. Because 3 days in a row during my journey, thinking about ending my life, depressed, drinking, doing drugs, by people who wanted to talk to me about the Lord.
You got picked up by 3 different people who wanted to talk to you about Jesus?
3 different people on 3 different days. It was not 3 rides in a row, but it was 3 different days in a row. And the interesting thing, and when you talk about a miracle, the interesting thing was that I remember this day like it was yesterday. I could tell you the temperature of the day. I was just north of this place called the Ocean County Mall in Toms River, and a guy pulls over, and I run up to his car, and I open the car door, and he goes, "Need a ride, brother?" And I was like, "Oh, not another one."
Was this like the second or third one that picked you up?
This was the 3rd day, and I got in the fellow's car, and he was driving, and he began to talk to me, saying I never needed to feel this way again. And he asked me if I wanted a Bible, and I told him no. And that's okay, I can get one. And every single molecule in my body was screaming to get out of the car. And in those days, if you're a hitchhiker, you pretend to be, you want to, hey, do you have any kids? Maybe the guy will take you all the way. And but that day, I asked him to pull over. He said, "No, I'm going further," and I scared him. I still had the build of a wrestler. I'm 21 years old, and I yelled at him, "Pull over," and he pulled over. I don't think it did any more of that evangelistic work, but I scared him, and or if you're going to do it, take 2 people. So he let me out of the car, and I was standing in front of the Toms River Presbyterian Church, which I am not a member of to this day, but I was standing in front of that church. And it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. Sun's coming up. If you headed straight east, you'd be in Seaside Heights, New Jersey. And the sun was shining off the cross. And it wasn't an out-of-body experience, but I remember I stood there, and I started to cry, and I said, "Why do all these people believe in you?" And, why does my life, and I said a couple bad words, and I said, why do I have this eye disease? And, why does my life, I actually said the word suck and said, if you're so real, why don't you come into my life? Why don't you help me? And I wiped the tears from my eyes and stuck out my thumb and got a ride. And prior to this, a couple months earlier, a friend of mine had gotten arrested and went to a rehab, and I was the devil friend that would call him on the phone, and he would tell me he couldn't hang around with me. And it was about 2 weeks after this experience, I called him up after saying I was going to go out for 1 drink and waking up the next day in despair and saying, I just can't do this anymore. And I called this fella up, and I said, I think I need help. And he lived, where we grew up, and he drove 30 miles out to help me, to get me, and bring me to one of these 12-step meetings he was going to at the time. And then he brought me 30 miles back home and 30 miles back to his house. He drove 120 miles that day to help me.
Wow.
And I was really nervous, and I wanted, like, when he said, I'll come now, I was like, well, how about next week? I didn't want him to come now, And I didn't know where we were going. I said, he said, just sit back, relax, and listen. And there was another fellow in the car with him, and he was older, and I was scared. And we pull up, and I get out of the car, and Daniel, I'm standing in front of the same church, the same cross that I asked, that if you're real, will you come into my life? And that was November 3rd, 1983.
Wow.
And as I sit today, I have not touched a drop of alcohol in over 35 years.
That is amazing.
I was healed that day.
So this,
I get emotional talking about it.
I can imagine. I mean, God, you ask God for a sign, come into my life, and He brings you back to the same exact church. What, it was like 2 weeks later, you said, or something?
It was 2 weeks later.
My goodness.
It was late October. I was hitchhiking. It was November 3rd, 1983, that I said that prayer. And I went to these meetings, and I saw God in the meetings. And then it was just after December, because I was 22 years old. I was living in a little efficiency apartment. It was so small I could answer the door, be in bed, and in the kitchen at the same time. That park. It was funny. I you know, because I've been out speaking, you can tell. You know, I make people laugh, but it's true. I turn on the lights, my friends would scatter. You know.
Oh man.
It was $60 a week. I didn't go out to Colorado. I was on unemployment. I was hitchhiking to these meetings now to try to better my life, and
that's amazing.
And this guy came over my efficiency apartment, and he was a guy from my wrestling team. He was a crazy guy who would light garbage cans and stick them in the elevator when we're on away meets, you know, if we stayed in a hotel. And he had been saved, and he came over and with like a paper taking me through scriptures, and all I had was footprints in the sand that some gal gave me from one of these meetings, and it's all I owned. It's the only thing I had. It was on the wall. And, you know, we went through these scriptures, and he said, "What's holding you back?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, that's Satan holding you back." And everything he was saying was all the things I was hearing in these meetings, you know, and they were closing with the Our Father and everything else. Today I know that it's kind of, there's a big separation in a lot of these meetings, but, and I said that prayer. I can't tell you the exact date, but I was just 22 years old, and I accepted Jesus Christ into my life.
Wow, that's
back
amazing.
In the beginning of 1984.
Oh, man, I love it. Friend, you're listening to Divine Intervention Radio. I'm your host, Daniel Fazina, and we are visiting with our special guest, Mr. Michael Benson. He's sharing his testimony of how the Lord got a hold of him and has done a lot of work in his life in, you know, also dealing with his glaucoma and the foundation he's a part of and the ministry he works with as well. Michael, I want to go back to you know, the days when you were hitchhiking, those 3 days in a row. Can you tell me about the first two incidences? I mean, were you open to hearing about Jesus at all, or what were those experiences like?
Zero interest.
Okay.
You know, it's funny because I've told this story and no one's ever asked me about those first two other instances.
Okay.
And I remember one of them. I just remember that it was that I kept getting called on, but one of them was a gal who picked me up. And, you know, I was thinking about picking her up, and I had, you know, to be very honest, I had like a half of a marijuana joint on me, and I asked her if, you know, like she was giving me a ride, and I was like, wow, you know, good-looking girl giving me a ride. I mean, so dangerous to do.
Sure.
Today, you know, some pretty gal picks up a Juan Epstein-looking guy hitchhiking, you know, and I asked her, hey, you know, you want to get high? And she's like, no, I don't do that anymore. Like, which indicated that she used to, and that she had Jesus Christ in her life. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like polite to her, and she goes, oh, you know, and I just took the ride as far as she was going, and I got out. But by the next time, and that was the second incident, by the next time, you know, this guy started talking to me, you know, I was angry. Very, very angry. Isn't
it amazing, though, how even though we may have no interest, God pursues us, and He's consistent and persistent, you know, to get you to that point of like, hey, you know, I guess you kind of figured He was trying to reach out to you, and that's why you were talking to Him when you got let off at the church in front of the cross. I think that's amazing.
Well, you know, one of the things is, you know, that, you know, and I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but you know, in maturity now in 57, I can tell you there's a lot of years that I wallowed in spiritual emotionalism. And the difference between knowing God, that there's a God, or knowing that the story of Jesus and covered by His blood and, you know, your sin not being seen, versus really trusting him in your life. One day at a time, manna for the day. Living in today, not knowing the future. Still today, I have advanced glaucoma. I never take a sighted day. My left eye is almost gone. My right eye takes over. I am so grateful and blessed. Some would say my eyes are a miracle, but the power of trusting him one day at a time and living in that trust versus just knowing there's a God and talking about God, that is really, really the difference in what we talk about, especially when we're dealing with people who have been diagnosed with losing vision. Because, the interesting thing is the healed people are the ones who are already blind, who have accepted it, that are dealing with it. The fear of the unknown is crippling if you don't if you don't have God in your life to sustain you. That's where I was at. But then, driven by 1,000 forms of fear, it's like the job I selected, the woman I married. Who's going to love me if I go blind? I would be at a baseball game and a date would say, "You have great eyes." And my mind would be in some made-up future. When do I tell her? Would she still want to date me? Right. I have another doctor's appointment. Am I going to need another surgery? I've had multiple surgeries on both of my eyes. And if I do go blind, who's going to love me if I do go blind? And what am I going to do for a living? And knowing God and being saved, right, but trusting him now was a long journey.
Right. Well, that comes with maturity. I tell people all the time when, being born again is just like being born. It only takes, a few minutes to be born, but to grow in God and to grow in your comfort of your identity and to trust in him is like growing in real life. You have to grow up. You start out as a baby, then you go as a toddler, and then finally you reach maturity and adulthood. But it takes a journey. It's a lifetime walk. So I fully understand that, and I thank you for pointing out that distinction. And you also mentioned the crippling fear of the unknown, and if you don't have God in your life, how that can be so debilitating. And that's one of the main reason why I do this show, because I want people to hear these testimonies, and not just for the testimonies themselves, but so they can reach out to the God of miracles and to really follow him and trust him, because whether you get a so-called miracle or not in your life, you do need God in your life. You need forgiveness from sins, and not only that, but to be able to live in peace in this world, because this world, Jesus said, you'll have trouble in this world, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And I really feel for people who don't know God and don't have that relationship, because this world, it's tough. There's a lot of brokenness and disease, and bad things happen. And unfortunately, because of the curse of sin, we're all going to die one day. But the good news is, if you have Jesus, you can look forward to being with him after this life on earth is done. And that's really what I want people to get out of this. So again, thank you for that.
Amen. Well, in living in the power and not in the fear, I can tell you there's, all of these things are addressed in like the ministry that I do. And, so when you combine this epidemic of drugs and alcohol going out there, or then people that are living in fear that one day they may go blind. So it's very unique, because I find people that are actually acting out in the epidemic because of that fear, right? And the symptom. And I've been a proponent to some of these 12-step groups have been really, really great. And if you go to their origin, they're biblically based. But there is a movement out there, as that you get to make God up as you understand him, right? God as you understand him, which is just almost flipped, right? What it really means is that your understanding is limited, and as you are obedient, your understanding will grow. So God is just start with your understanding where you are now,
Right.
and then get into His Word, and then you'll intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle you because you are filled with His Word, and it comes up in a situation where an old tape would kick in and an old behavior would kick in. So there's so much power in His Word. And I got to be honest with you, Daniel, I've shot myself in the foot so many times I'm surprised I have toes, right?
Join the club. It's part of the growth process. It's part of the journey.
Well,
and
my
let's get
story
to more
was
of that,
I
but-
got saved and then my life was this perfect Christian. See, I had to go out and really, I'm not into the prosperity gospel, but there were times that I was a church hopper. I would find what's wrong with the church and move, and then there were periods where I wanted to live in the gray area and I wouldn't go to church. But I always I got to make a lot of money because if I ever go blind, I got to be okay. And I put a lot of emphasis on money and finance and being successful. And it's very, very interesting. I won't go into my whole career, but I will tell you, because you wanted divine interventions.
Well, let's take a quick break because we're coming up against a break, but I do want to hear about your divine intervention and your career as well. But let's get that right after the break. Friend, you're listening to Divine Intervention Radio. I'm your host, Daniel Fazina, and our special guest today is Mr. Michael Benson. We'll be right back with more of him after the break. Stay with us.
You're listening to Divine Intervention with Daniel Fazina, and we'll return in just a moment.
I believe in miracles.
Hey, this is Daniel Fazina of Divine Intervention Radio. Jesus calmed a raging storm, healed paralytics, and even raised the dead. But are these types of events still happening today? The answer to this question, as you will see from reading my book, Divine Intervention, 50 True Stories of God's Miracles Today, is an emphatic yes. Contained within the book is a collection of amazing true stories that attest to this fact. More information about Divine Intervention, 50 True Stories of God's Miracles Today can be found at divineinterventionradio.com.
What's happening? This is Fieldy from Corn. You're listening to Divine Intervention with Daniel Fazina. Stay tuned.
Saves us, it sure ain't cause we're good guys inside. If the Lord God spoke it, just trust the quote. Said the Savior knows you, chose you. I can tell you now though. Could he choose, could he choose, could he choose you? Could he choose, could he choose, could he choose you? You don't think, don't know, God choosing you. You don't think, don't know, God choosing you somehow.
Welcome back to Divine Intervention Radio. DivineInterventionRadio.com is the website. I'm your host, Daniel Fazina. You can also tune in at youtube.com/Divine Intervention Radio. If you wouldn't mind, please go there and like the episodes and subscribe to the channel. That will really help us grow the show. And you can catch up on any of the episodes you've missed because all the archives are there as well. We got plenty of miracle stories for you to encourage you and lift you up. So I would encourage you to go there and just get inspired by the amazing miracles that God is doing all the time. And today's guest is certainly no exception to that. His name is Michael Benson, and he is a person who had been born with glaucoma. He is the youngest person to ever have glaucoma surgery. He was only a few days old, And before the break, he was sharing his testimony of how the Lord got a hold of him. Michael, welcome back.
Hey, good to be back.
All right. So before the break, Michael, you were telling us about an intervention that you experienced in the year 2014 that kind of led you into ministry. And tell us about that story. How did God intervene in your life at that point?
Well, I can tell you that there's points in your life that you just see a major shift.
Right.
And I had some very great success in my life, and based on some economics of the United States, like some crashes like 2008, there were some devastation, and I found myself rebuilding myself, and I was a director of business development for a company out of Des Moines, Iowa, flying around the country. And I don't want to name the company because what I'm going to say about them is I was very disappointed that they were an over-promiser and under-deliverer. And I found myself with a sweet package and stock, and one more time in a scenario in meetings with atrocious language and people who didn't really care about the consumer. And the company was beginning to have some ethical issues that bordered on legal.
Uh-oh.
I had been a guest on a radio show called Truth for Our Times. Tamara Scott, and she is the, and I'm not being political here, I'm just telling you who she is, but she is the national committee woman for the Republican Party for Iowa for the United States of America.
Okay.
So she's very involved. Her radio show, Truth for the Times. I had been a guest on her show a couple of times on Christian recovery, and her husband owns the Holiday Inn at the Des Moines airport, I believe. And I became friends with them because I was frequently Des Moines, and I called up Tamara and I said, hey, Tamara, I need prayer. And we got together for lunch, and, humility is the beginning of growth, right? Here I am in Des Moines. Des Moines is a foreign language to a guy who grew up in New Jersey, I got to tell you. Foreign land.
Right.
I grew up in Bruce Springsteen land, and the Jersey Shore, and I'm in Iowa, and it's different.
I'm surprised that you were saying that this company was having, atrocious language and all that. I thought everyone in Des Moines was saved. What's up with that?
Yeah, I don't know. Not this scenario. But, I had spent a lot of good portion of my life helping people with alcohol and drug problems, but I avoided the blind like the plague. I didn't want to look at them. They were like bills that I didn't want to open up because it was the fear of that could be me someday.
Right.
Maybe it was denial. I never took Braille. Not that I'm a claim it guy, but I guess I am because I've been claiming my vision, for many, many years. And so the glaucoma, not my glaucoma, like that
right,
thing.
Right.
And I subscribe to that, and I'm claiming my vision, and the Lord told me I'm going to have vision all the days of my life, and then I said, am I going to live a long life? Because I could get hit by a car tomorrow.
That's a good point.
It's like I got one eye open, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a long life too. So, I have this relationship now where I'm really relying on Him, and I need the funds, but I'm very unhappy, and we prayed. And I said, I think I'm supposed to take my skill set and utilize my skill set in nonprofit, in some kind of ministry or something. But I have these, financial obligations that I've put myself in. And she prayed with me and said, you know what, Michael, in God's time, He'll open the doors He wants open. And the next morning, I had a 5:30 a.m. flight out of Des Moines. And here I am in the Newark airport, because it was not a direct flight, and I'm eating terrible at the time, like 2 Egg McMuffins and an orange juice and a coffee and wrappers all over. And a woman breaks my trance and says, do you mind if I throw that stuff away? I was sharing like a charge area. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. She only had a coffee cup, and I went and threw her coffee cup away. And now it's, I don't know, very early in the morning, 7 a.m., too early to have a conversation. But we broke the ice, and she starts a conversation with me, and she was on the flight from Des Moines. And we start talking, and she says to me, so what do you do? You know, the classic conversation, you know, oh, I'm the business development director for, you know. And I said, well, what do you do? And she says, I'm a board member for a nonprofit, and I'm on my way to a meeting in New York because Mayor Bloomberg just gave us $5 million.
Oh, wow.
So what? And I said, you're kidding me, you know? So I started sharing with her. I said, you know, I was just praying yesterday that. And I told her that I had been on. She goes, oh, I listened to Mara Scott's show. I go, you're kidding me. And, you know, so now we're having this conversation. And to be very honest with you, Daniel, and I'm sure some of your listeners do this, I'm watching her lips move, and I'm going, is this you, God? You know, going, it's you. I'm going to be, you know. And she's saying, you know, we're looking for a new CEO. And I'm saying, how much does a CEO earn? I'm saying to myself, of a nonprofit. I'm thinking, this is God. I prayed just yesterday. I'm going to be the CEO of this nonprofit. I don't even know what they do. Like, you know, and like, you know, I'm a Seinfeld fan, and it was a Southwest flight, and I'm like George Costanza. I got to leave on a high note. I better not sit next to the lady. You know, I'll ruin it on the flight to Newark. So, for those that understand Seinfeld, so you know, she tells me it's Van Mark's disease or something like that. I still never looked it up. And Abe Lincoln had it, and it's the hardening of the arteries. And I'm on the plane. I'm on the Southwest plane, and I get in my seat. I put down my tray, and I put my hands in my head, and I start to pray. And I was like, Lord, was that you? And if anyone listening has this have ever happened, and I can't tell anyone who's not a Christian this story, maybe I can. I got to be bold, but I heard an audible voice that said no, just like that.
Wow.
I slumped down, and I started, like, tears welled up, and what I heard next was, I've given you vision all the days of your life, and I want you to go out and give it away. And I said, okay, I'll do it.
Did you understand what that meant, though?
Yes, there is some more there. That's the crux of it.
Okay.
I prayed all the way home, and I got off the plane, and I called some people I knew that were in nonprofit, and I said, I'm supposed to help people going blind. Believe me, up to this point, I had nothing to do with anybody that had anything to do with losing vision. I helped a lot of people get sober, but nothing to do with eyes. And I got together for a couple of meetings, and one woman in the meeting, you know, well, they were telling me I needed insurance, and I needed to be a 501c3, and I needed to do this, and I needed to do that. And I asked a question, and this one woman who I invited to the meeting said, I hope you're not going to be a dancing bear.
A dancing bear?
A dancing bear? Grateful Dead? That's what I was thinking. Grateful Dead, a dancing bear. Right? And she said, no, a dancing bear is a man who thinks of the idea and expects the woman in nonprofit to do all the work. And I stopped, and I said, I got to go. And they said, where are you going? And I said, Niagara Falls. And they said, what? I said, yeah, I got to go. I just got to make this real. I don't know if anyone listening has ever been where something's on you and everyone's telling you you can't do it and you know you're supposed to do it. And 2 years earlier, I had been taken to Niagara Falls because ever since I was 16, I had been traveling and going everywhere I could, and I would close my eyes, and I would bring up all the sounds, the smells, the wind, and I wouldn't say anything, and then I would whisper the words, burn it, and I would open my eyes, and I would burn the memory of what I was looking at like musical tracks. And then I would break that trance, and then I would meditate it on night before I go to bed and in the morning, and I was practicing that I could be on an elephant in Thailand, or I could be ziplining in Costa Rica, or I could be, you know, in Shanghai, China, because I had visited all these places. My goal was to burn all these visual memories, and if I ever lost my sight, I would always have these visions in my mind's eye. And the Lord told me to go teach this to other people and share what He's done for me.
So you have a technique that you teach in your Visual Experience Foundation about this, like preserving memories. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Tell us about how you actually founded the organization and, how you got involved with it and then what you do.
Well, so what I did was, as I got off that plane, I walked out and I said, I have to go to Niagara Falls. Someone had taken me close in my life and said, you got to go visit Niagara Falls, and I went and burned it. So how it got started was I walked out of that meeting, and I found a young guy with 10% vision left, 21 years old. He had something called retinitis pigmentosa, and that's where the vision just keeps creeping in from the side to the side. It's like looking through a toilet paper roll and eventually a straw, and eventually you go blind. Most people with it are blind by their 30, 35 years old. And I found this fella. He was from Florida, and I flew him and a friend into Buffalo. And I drove to Buffalo. I wanted to help me and document this. And on the way, I made some phone calls and told some people what we were doing. And what happened was ABC News called while we were driving and asked to speak to me and came out and filmed the event. And as soon as we knew ABC was coming, Niagara Falls State Park got involved, the helicopter company got involved, and we were on television in Buffalo, and our very first visual experience was on television, and then hundreds of letters came in of people that were losing vision.
Oh my gosh.
So I can't make this up. When the sea gets parted, so I'm driving back from Niagara Falls, and my phone rings, and it's ABC World News, and they said, we just saw a local piece, and we'd like to film you. Where are you going next? And I said, without hesitation, the Grand Canyon. And I was then. It took a while. I went a couple of times prior to them coming out, and but we were filmed in the Grand Canyon and aired on ABC World News, bringing someone on a visual experience. We were filmed in the Grand Canyon another time, praying for someone's vision that went viral, and we haven't stopped.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So, describe the experience, the visual experience, to those who are not familiar with it. But what do you do exactly when you teach these people this technique, let's say?
Well, we now have relationships in Niagara Falls, Grand Canyon. We've gone to a number of places, and the reason we started the company we start to help all ministries now is because we learned about the fact that no one donates. We were on ABC World News and no money came in. It's amazing. So that's really what we work on today. We want to help every single ministry and use our skill sets, and that's what BeCauses.com is and some of the other things we're doing. But we started by raising as much money as we possibly could through some internet techniques and marketing skills that I had, being that donations weren't coming in. And now we teach those skills and want to help ministries raise money for their good works. Working together for good, comes right from Romans 8:28, which is our tagline, and BeCauses.com. But within our foundation, we have all these letters. We select mainly younger people who, based on how old they are and how fast they're losing their vision, and we provide a visual wish. And they're all excited about, getting to go to the Grand Canyon or Niagara Falls. But we let everybody know we're a faith-based organization, and we start the week or the few days that we take them where I share my testimonial about what happened to me, and being at a Yankee game, by the way, when a girl tells you got great eyes, and then hearing a crack of the bat and realize you just missed 3 innings because you're living someday in the future or wanting to drink or kill yourself. Everyone comes like, they're all together, and by the time we get done, they're crying and sharing that, they're scared. And, they open up, and we first share the burning technique. We share it with them. We teach them how to do it. and we share our testimonial, and then throughout the few days we have different conversations, and we open it up to everyone, and we ask if we can pray for their eyes, so that's what we do on the visual experience events. And what it has led to, which we're getting ready to do our 4th annual blind surfing event. We started the very first blind surfing event on August 17th in Long Branch, New Jersey. We are taking blind surfers out on the waves, and they're the mentors, and we send a message that, if you lose your vision, your life's not over. And that's another event that we do every year now, is we take blind people out surfing. This year, we're opening it up to people who are diagnosed losing vision, to kind of show them that, those that are living in fear and despair, that, there's life after blindness if some reason technology doesn't increase as fast as their vision loss, that, they're not totally hopeless. And it's not a front-loaded thing where we're trying to get everybody saved that comes to the event, but everybody at the event knows who we are, what we stand for. We have Christian surfers giving surfing lessons to family members. Everybody knows where we come from, that we're a faith-based organization, and that's what we do in Visual Experience Foundation.
That is a wonderful thing. And I wanted to ask you, having, as you mentioned, having a disease like this and having that fear of the future, what it might hold, do you find that the people who come to your events are open to the gospel? And what results have you seen from the prayers, both for their vision and for just, for them in general, for how do they respond to your testimonies and the prayer for salvation? What's been the results of your work?
Well, I certainly believe that there's seed planters, waterers, pruners, and fruit pickers, right?
Sure.
And it's the guy who tries to plant seed, water, prune, and fruit pick all in one visit, that the person walks away and says, gee whiz, and I think we've gotten to play every single role depending on, where these people are and how, the hand of God has touched different people. We've had a gospel singer who was not wanting to use a cane with someone totally blind who was a non-believer who uses a cane. And interesting, we've allowed, the gospel singer was witnessing to the non-believer with the cane, and the woman with the cane was softening her up that she should surrender and use the cane. So we kind of sit back and we watch, things happen. We had one young gal who showed up to an interview totally drunk, and people were freaking out. And, I stopped the camera, said, you can't use that footage. And, I know that today that she's in she speaks of God and she's in a recovery program. So, we know that we've been used, and that is our prayer, Use us, open the doors you want open, close the doors you want closed, bring the people you're supposed to bring, and here's the tough one: take away the people that are supposed to be taken away.
Amen.
And that's that's what we lean on. One of the things that I want to bring through all of this, there was a third calling in my life, and that is, this was all about me, and it's a lot about me. I got nominated for CNN Heroes and a lot of accolades on Facebook, and what a great guy you are, and you're an angel, and all this different stuff. And because, I don't know who started Make-A-Wish, but when you're a small nonprofit, everything's about Michael and his glaucoma, and I'm realizing this, and God called me a third time, and he said, this is not about you, and it's not about this Visual Experience Foundation. And that's, what I really want to get to at the end of this. Because, yes, I do visual experience selflessly, to give away, and there's a lot of focus on people want to thank me, and I got to put the purpose on that it's not me, it's the grace of God, but it still comes at me. And I think everybody gets in that position when you do good work, people want to give you the credit, There's a thing of the spoons where if you look up the story of the long spoons, where when everybody's feeding themselves, they're in anguish. And when everybody's feeding everybody else, they're fat and happy. And when you look at these two images, one is hell and one is heaven. Same image, same, pot of food in the middle in an oasis. And so BeCauses.com was set up to feed every ministry. Working together for good, showing that we're capitalizing a company on trends to help every single ministry. You can check BeCauses.com out. That was the third calling, to set something up that we can use our techniques to help every ministry, every nonprofit. And we're getting ready to launch Working Together for Good, where people can actually help their ministries, right? And it's an opportunity for individuals to get involved. And then the last thing I want to mention is through partnership, we just, through Horizon Media Studios, we just launched Overcomers.tv. And I think Mike Lindell from My Pillow just did an episode on it, so you can go and watch some of those episodes on different people that are overcomers. So things just keep coming at us, and we just keep praying, use us to the level that you want to use us. And, hopefully today someone was inspired, and I just want to make the point. It's certainly not about me. It's all about him.
All right. Well, Michael Benson, I want to thank you so much. What an amazing testimony, and I love the good work you're doing. And don't let it go to your head, though, okay?
Not me, man. Without him, man, I'm nothing. I believe that today. I got every character defect I was ever born with, Well,
I appreciate the good work you're doing, and I appreciate you taking the time to share on Divine Intervention Radio. God bless you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Daniel, for your time, and I appreciate it. And God bless all the listeners.
Amen. Friend, that about does it for another exciting episode of Divine Intervention Radio. Our special guest has been Michael Benson. You can go to b-causes.com or lovevision.org and see about the great work he is doing. Once again, I'm your host, Daniel Fazina, divineinterventionradio.com or facebook.com/Divine Intervention Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you again next time on Divine Intervention. Take care and God bless.
You've been listening to Divine Intervention with your host, Daniel Fazina. You can email Daniel at divineintervention@mail.com. That's divineintervention@mail.com. All programs of Divine Intervention are available online at divineinterventionradio.com. That's divineinterventionradio.com. Join us next time here on Divine Intervention.
Hey, this is Daniel Fazina of Divine Intervention Radio. Jesus calmed a raging storm, healed paralytics, and even raised the dead. But are these types of events still happening today? The answer to this question, as you will see from reading my book, Divine Intervention, 50 True Stories of God's Miracles Today, is an emphatic yes. Contained within the book is a collection of amazing true stories that attest to this fact. More information about Divine Intervention, 50 True Stories of God's Miracles Today can be found at divineinterventionradio.com.
Hi, it's Kevin McCullough. You may know me from Talk Radio or from Fox News Channel. But I want to talk to you about something that you may not have ever considered before. The potential that you could get free energy. Now, I know it seems unbelievable. And you may have heard the expression, there's no such thing as a free lunch. But in the world of energy, it is possible to have your monthly electrical and natural gas bills eliminated. That's one of the benefits of the program with Ambit Energy. My good friend, the energy consultant Daniel Fazina, has talked about this on radio with me. But today, we're interested in helping you find out more. So if you're looking for information on how it works, try this URL, freepowernow.com. That's freepowernow.com. And if you're ready now to get free energy, grab your utility bill and dial 205-55-AMBIT. That's 205-55-AMBIT or freepowernow.com.
Divine Intervention welcomes the support of Latirzo Associates, Certified Public Accountants. Latirzo Associates, Certified Public Accountants is a family-owned and operated Christian business serving their clients with quality accounting services for over 40 years, offering full-service accounting for any type of business, large or small, in any state of the union. Latirzo Associates, Certified Public Accountants, 12 Oak Street, No. 5, West Hampton Beach, New York, 11978. Phone 631-288-3334. That's 631-288-3334.